Shabbat Shalom to you, everybody watching Israel Update, and welcome. As you can see, Doobie and I are together in person, which was so awesome, and we are in Washington, D.C. Everything we're doing right now, everything's kind of focusing towards the election. We're looking towards what's going on, praying and interceding for the soul of America, and of course, as always, we spend our time praying and interceding for Israel as well. But Doobie and I are together today, right now, here in Washington, D.C., and where we are at is at the World War II Memorial. Now, thinking about voting, one of the key issues for anybody who calls themselves a Christian, a Christ follower, a disciple of Christ, one of the key issues always has to be the nation of Israel. Where does the party stand on it? What do they want to do with it? Where does Israel feature on the priority list? And we're standing at this memorial right now that remembers. The word in Hebrew, yizkor, it's what we talk about always whenever we speak about the Holocaust, remembering what's happened. And here we are right now in a place of memorial where we remember, we've been talking about it, how after the Second World War, nobody wanted to absorb the Jews that had survived the Holocaust. Nobody wanted to deal with the admin of it. But America ended up being one of the nations that took in the most Jews, and this is one of the places that remembers that memorializes how Israel and America have been together from right after one of the most tragic times. And of course, straight after that, we know Isaiah 66:8 was fulfilled. Can a nation be born in a day, yet no sooner is Zion in labor than she brings forth her sons? And that happened on May the 14th, 1948, which we know about. But for us right now, a Christian, a Jew, standing here together, somebody from South Africa, someone from Israel, but people who love the nation of America, who love the nation of Israel. And for all of you out there, we know you care about Israel, we know you care about America. And so part of what we're doing here right now is standing in agreement, trusting God that Christians would rise and combine faith with action. The book of James tells us, what good is your faith, my brothers, if there is no deeds that accompany it? And so for Christians, we want to see Christians rise up. And one of the key issues, of course, abortion is a big one. There's all these different issues, but Israel is one of the key issues for this election, for the future of America, and indeed for the future of Israel. So I can't vote. I wish I could. I feel pretty impassioned about it. But Doobs, here we are standing at the World War II Memorial, remembering all of this. You know so much about this. How do you feel about everything that's going on right now?
Christy, thank you so much for this incredible introduction. And you know, we're standing here in front of our followers, the people that loves Israel, loves America. And it's so amazingly symbolic to stand here when right behind us, this is the World War II Memorial, because the World War II is literally the place where I would say the prophecy started to be fulfilled. The people of Israel paid the most unbelievable toll of a third of our people just vanished, slaughtered in the Holocaust. 6 million Jews were killed over there. But here came America, and most of the camps were liberated by the Americans. The Americans were the ones to first and foremost enable Jews, Jewish pilots, Jewish soldiers to be part of their army with no racism, with no hatred. I don't understand. I'm standing here now on the soil of Washington, D.C., and from the moment that this president was elected, people wanted to impeach him because of allegation and lies about him being a racist. America was the first nation in the world that absorbed the Jewish people right after the war and before the war, and let us be leaders in the war against evil, against Nazism. And this president right now is the closest friend that Israel ever had in its history. And I don't get you Jewish Americans, if any of you are watching us, I'm sure you're not, because you go to your whatever liberal channels you're at, but if you're watching this one, I don't get it. All the polls are saying 75% of you are voting for the other side. Let me tell you something. You don't care about Israel. Well, even in the polls, they ask you, what are your first priorities? Israel gets only 4%. So I really don't know where you're standing at, but I know where I'm standing at. I'm standing on the most blessed soil in the world that glorifies the sacrifice of millions of people and soldiers that gave their lives to bring freedom to this world, to take us out of the cloth of the Nazism, which is rising its heads up again. Kim prophesied about the Fourth Reich, and we're seeing some people trying to push this socialism forward. And I know that this administration stands against it and will stand against it. So I want you to know more than anything that I am here to support the way it's the righteous way that remembers and the way that works against all these evils. And you know, Christy, the people that are following us now, today we are entering into a Shabbat. We're entering into a time where God rested and designated this very time for people for meditation, to think about what's going on in the Spirit and what do we have to pray about. I wanted to pray about these upcoming elections. I wanted to pray about what is right and what is righteous. And I want to connect it to the Torah portion of this week, with your permission. We just last week, we started from the beginning of the book of Genesis, when God started to create this world out of the chaos. And look at us people, immediately by our sins, first the original sin by Adam and Eve and the snake, and then the other sins that the people of Israel sinned against God. It wasn't still the people of Israel, there was the people of the world were sinning against God, to the extent that this Torah portion, we're reading the Torah portion of Noah. And this is when God decided to make sure that the people will pay for their sins, and He wiped out the world. He brought these terrible floods over the world, but He gave us a way to escape. He said to those of you who want to live a pure, clean life, those of you, you come on my board. You get on board of the ship of the Ark of Noah. You're going to go by your couple ships, 2 and 2 from each species, and I'm going to restart the world. I'm going to take care of this new chaos. I don't want you guys to bring us on the verge of a new chaos. I want you to understand, God promised us by the end of the Torah portion of Noah, by bringing the beautiful rainbow, He said, I will never again destroy my world. But we have to be worthy of this promise. And I want you all to understand that even your voting counts, because I know what is close to God. I cannot vote, just like Christy cannot vote, but the only way I can really influence is to tell you that God cares about His people, His chosen people. Whoever blesses you, the seed of Abraham will be blessed, and through you, all the families of this world. Donald Trump and his administration have been a greatest blessing to Israel, taking the embassy to Jerusalem, helping us sign a peace treaty with the Accord of Abraham Accord, with nations, with Muslim nations.
Unbelievable.
Guys, you know what to choose.
Yeah. Everything you said there was amazing, Doobs, and it's so right. And just, again, a reminder. Right now, the world that we're living in, Kim prophesied a rise of the Fourth Reich. One of the, I think what Donné put on Prophetic Rewind this past week, this past Monday, was actually when Kim started prophesying about that from Holland in 2010. And actually just on the other side of the camera, we've got Charlie Jordan here too, because we're all here in DC together, filming a whole bunch of stuff because of this election thing that's coming up. But we have to be aware of the fact that right now is a pivotal moment in the history of America, in the history of Israel, and indeed in the history of the free world. As socialism and communism tries to creep in and crush freedom, because we have to remember, Jesus came that we would have life and life in abundance. That's what John 10:10 says. But the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. John 8:32 tells us, he who the Son has set free is free indeed. Speaks about how you will know the truth and the truth will set you free. So right now we're in a war for truth. We're in a war for the supremacy of the laws of God. We're in a war for moral absolutism to be established and continue to be established. But also we are in a war where anti-Semitism is on the rise, where there is, it feels like the same spirit of the Third Reich that is on the rise. And so something that we can do, we pray. It's what we do. We pray, we stand together, but it's faith and action. If you're able to, you vote, and that is taking a stand against this spirit.
You know, and I want to tell you something about styles and you know, manners of talking and all these kind of things. You know, I hear a lot of the people, like, you know, the criticism that I hear from some of my Jewish friends is when they talk about the president, the elections, they don't like the way he talks, they don't like the way he speaks. Well, you know what? God puts things into action. I'm sure that nobody in the camp of Israel liked the way Moses was talking, because he was a stutterer, you know. It was very hard for him to express himself, but through his deed, they were saved. Israel is saved through the deeds. You may be not the smoothest talker, you may maybe carry yourself in a different way, maybe people would not like your style, but the only thing you can judge is the action. And this man is the only man that I've seen in the history of Israel that puts his actions to where and what he was promising to do. And that's all it counts for me. You know, I care for my nation. I care for my people. I care for you Jewish people that lives in America, even though you don't care enough for yourselves, because as Jewish people, we are responsible for each other. We are each other guarantors. If all hell breaks free, the first thing you're going to go is you're going to run into Israel. And I wouldn't ask you what you voted for, who you spoke for. I'll open my heart, my home, and I'll absorb you in, because you are my brethren, you are my sisters, and that's why I know that you should care for the truth, and that's what you should consider when you come to these polls on the 3rd of November.
And so from us today, from Washington, D.C., we're going to say Shabbat Shalom again. Tomorrow, houseofdestiny.tv, we have our DC election special, Faith is Action. You're going to see me, Doobie, Donne, Charlie. We're going to be speaking about Kim's prophecies concerning President Trump. We're going to be speaking about Washington for Jesus back in 96. We're going to be hearing from all of us, speaking to you from the soil of Washington, D.C., so you don't want to miss that. houseofdestiny.tv, noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. Make sure you tune in tomorrow and watch that. And as always, we will be back next week. Doobie and I are going to be doing a bunch of shows together because we're going to be together for a while. So every week, every Friday, we have a brand new show for you on IsraelUpdate.org. God bless you.
Shabbat Shalom.